Hey everybody, in this video we're going to talk a little bit of how this homeowner helped me pour this concrete floor. We're doing a garage floor today. It's 32 by 24 and the homeowner helps me do pretty much the whole thing. So how does the homeowner know anything about concrete? Well, let me just tell you a little bit about him. First of all, this is Sean. He's a retired firefighter, so 30 years in the fire department business. He's retired. But he also grew up in the concrete business. His dad was a foundation man. They poured their own foundations. They did their own floors. So Sean, as a kid, grew up in the business. And then when his dad retired, he went and did these foundations on the side. So he actually did the concrete walls here. He did everything here. He dug this out. He did all the excavation, poured the concrete walls. And now he's having me help him pour the concrete floor. I'll pour it and I'll finish it today for him. And then he's also going to build the garage himself. He built 2 houses on this land that he owns here for his 2 kids. And now he's putting this in for himself. So that's kind of how, Sean got to know how to do concrete. And this is exactly what he wanted here for his garage. He wanted the wire mesh in it. We're using high range water reducer in the mix. We got a 3500 PSI mix with fiber mesh. And he put the wire mesh down. He tied the wire all together. He did all the prep here. I just basically was, I'm over here to help him just pour it and finish it. Now, we did expect a third guy here, and he will show up. He's a friend of mine. You've seen him in some of my other videos, Harvey. But concrete showed up really early this morning, a lot earlier than what we expected for some reason. So we just got started pouring without Harvey. And if you're wondering, if you've watched any of my other videos and I have Luke and Darren work for me, if you're wondering where they are today, well, it's moose hunting week in Maine. This is early in the fall. They have a week that you get drawn for moose hunting, and one of my guys, they won the permit for the moose hunting, so they're way up north in the state of Maine, both Luke and Darren, trying to get a moose. As you can see, the slump with the high range water reducer, it goes in really nice. And for 2 guys pouring a concrete floor, I mean, it makes it a heck of a lot easier than using no water reducer and trying to pour this thing at about a 4, maybe even a 5-inch slump. Getting the wire all pulled up good. And one thing that most people think is, like, when we pull that wire up and then we walk back over it, it goes all the way back down to the dirt. Well, it's literally impossible for the wire to go all the way back down to the dirt because the concrete has rocks in it. See all the aggregate and the concrete we dumped out already? Well, once you get all those aggregates and those rocks under the wire mesh and then you go to step on it, the rocks are still under the wire. They're holding the wire up from the bottom. He didn't want to put any slab chairs in this or anything like that under the concrete. We just figured we'd pull it up. So there goes one truck. We got 2 trucks here. And we're magging the edges right now. We use a laser. We shot grades with the laser, snapped a chalk line around the outside edge, and then we set those grade pins in the middle according to the laser, and we put a nail through the hole in the metal pin right at slab grade. And now we're just striking off our pads. And the concrete floor here, the garage floor, slopes all towards the garage door, which is over here to the right, kind of towards the right front corner. You can see the form we put up. That's a 14-foot screed Sean and I are using. We're just straight edges in the concrete. And the thing, when you don't have a guy raking, you got to try to keep the concrete just a little high. Better high than low. And if it gets too high, then you got to stop and just kind of rake it out a little bit. Try to get it what we call tuned in as close as possible, but still leave it a little bit high. So you're always pulling a little bit back here. Now, we definitely don't want it low, or we'd have to stop and push some in. And then if it does stop building up too high, we stop like we just did, pull it down, and then just get going again. So you can see it's not too bad, straight edging with no guys raking. Now here's Harvey. He just showed up. So it's like 6:45 in the morning right here. We supposedly had concrete for 7, and they showed up around 6:30. So now with an extra guy here, we can pour this slump just a little stiffer than the fur. So it still has high range water reducer in it. but we can go kind of like go down a slump. Instead of pour like a 7 slump, we can pour around a 6 slump here. You can see all the rocks in there. I mean, once you get that wire pulled up and get all those rocks under it, it does its job. It works pretty good that way. And what we found, you know, pouring hundreds and hundreds of these garage floors over the years, what I've found is when you pour inside a concrete wall like this, inside a foundation, the floor is locked in inside the foundation, so the floor can't go anywhere. Basically, all it can do is either settle if you don't do the subgrade right, or I guess it could heave in the winter if the garage isn't heated and you put in some type of expansive soil in here that could draw moisture. It could heave in the winter if the ground freezes underneath the concrete. Well, that's not going to happen here because Sean does a really good job. When he backfills, he compacts it and lifts. You know, he'll put in 8 inches of gravel, he'll compact it, put another 8 inches in, compact it until he gets it to where he wants it right here. And then because it's really good permeable gravel, it's not going to hold water. It's going to, especially once the garage is up and built, I mean, it's going to be basically waterproof inside the garage here. So there's no chance of this ever heaving, even if he doesn't heat it. And that's why this method of how we do this works. You know, we don't even really need wire in this, I'll be honest with you. The wire does help transfer some of the load when you drive on the concrete. It will help transfer some load, and it will help if the concrete does want to crack. Even though we're going to saw cuts in here to make it crack in the saw cuts, if it did want to crack, the wire is going to help hold that crack together nice and tight. That's one good advantage of using wire mesh or even rebar. But we don't usually have any trouble with that stuff. You know, we don't have, when we saw cut the same day we power trowel. As you'll see on the video, I'm going to show you. You know, they're going to see a lot of finishing stuff I do on the video in this one. So, and you're going to see me sawing it. And when we saw it the way we do, it typically doesn't crack outside the saw joint unless something really strange happens. And you know, having experience for 45 years doing this, doing hundreds and hundreds of these, we figured out what works best, and that typically does work the way we do this right here. Now, using the high range water reducer in the mix means we've got a really low water cement ratio, so if this concrete were to be tested, it would test out at a very high strength, probably even higher than the 3,500 it is. Sometimes we see that, you know, it might test out at a 3,800, maybe even a 4,000 sometimes. Most of these concrete companies, they don't want to give you a low quality mix. So especially guys that we work with, you know, we work with them every day. We want to make sure we got good high quality concrete. And, you know, they pour a lot of spec jobs too, a lot of commercial jobs, so their mix designs are right on key. Another advantage of using the water reducer in the mix and pouring a little looser, you can see when it comes to bow floating, I'm basically just up and back and I'm done. I don't have to keep going over the same spot to get it smooth. So that speeds up that process a little bit too, and then it helps with the finishing process, as you'll see here in a little bit when it gets time to power trowel this. You know, some people ask, does using water reducer make the finishing different? Does it make the concrete act differently? Not the stuff we use doesn't. Early on, I'd say like maybe 25 years ago when we started using this stuff, it did. It kind of, I felt like the surface would dry up on it and the bottom would stay like soft, like jello, and it would make finishing quite difficult. But now you don't even notice it's in there. To us, it just acts like regular concrete. And we don't have to put it in special. Like, I just ask for it when I order the concrete, and they'll just put it in right at the concrete plant. And for us, I know some people have also asked, well, doesn't it only last for a certain amount of time and then the slump goes back to regular? Well, I suppose that could be true. We don't really experience that. Even if the job is an hour away from the concrete plant, we don't find that the water reducer is then minimized to almost nothing when it shows up on the job because it's been in the truck for an hour already. We just, you know, the truck shows up on the job, it mixes up. If we do need to add just a little bit of water to the slump to get it to where we want it. It's perfectly fine. That doesn't hurt the concrete. And then, you know, unless the concrete is super hot for some reason, maybe the guy was spinning his drum way too fast on the way to the job, or let's say it's 90 or 100 degrees out this morning, you're right in the sun. We usually find that we have quite a bit of working time to get this down. As you can see, the pace we're going at right now versus the slump we're doing. I mean, we easily get this down in probably 15 or 20 minutes without seeing any changes in the slump at all. So you can see me and Harvey are now on the screed. We're kick screeding. Sean's puddling behind us, and we're getting this down really good. Again, so a couple guys that don't normally pour concrete every single day. Definitely not Sean. I mean, he's retired. And then Harvey kind of works for himself. So he does do concrete. He does building. He does, you know, he does all kinds of things. But whenever we need an extra guy, we can give him a call and he'll come up and help for an hour or two. Then we just pay him, and then he goes back and does whatever he was going to do that day. Here's a really good look at what that looks like after we screed it. That's a really good slump right there for pouring concrete, especially concrete that has a slope to it. You can see that doesn't sag at all. Concrete floor is between 4 to 5 inches thick here. It slopes about 3 inches from the back of the garage to that garage door. It holds its shape really good as we screed it. And, you know, using a 14-foot screed like that, really, especially when you use a laser to set your pads, it really makes sure that your slopes are right where you need to be, especially when you learn how to screed like we do. There's all kinds of different ways to screed. There's all kinds of different ways to get this thing done right. See, Harvey can even screed using it by himself. Once you do this enough, you get the feel for it. But there's all different kinds of ways to screed, and, you know, getting good at a certain way. I'm sure you could do this any way you want if you're good at it. But I would just make sure that if you want something to slope either to a door like this or maybe to a center drain, that you got to really be checking your grades to make sure you don't have any low spots, any dips. You don't want any puddles in this afterwards. So that wasn't too bad. That took the three of us, you know, about between 20, 25 minutes to get this thing poured out, get it both loaded. And then I got some time in between waiting for it to cure up, just to hang out for a little bit, make sure my power trowel was all ready to go. I think I actually even drove home. I don't live too far from here. So I came back. This is about an hour later, so I could give it about an hour. Concrete's firmed up really good. And I'm just going to show you how I taper my garage doors. I don't like forming or boxing out the garage door and leaving a 2-inch lip like a lot of guys do. We like to just taper it. So this is going to taper back about 9 inches from the form. Typically the garage door will sit down about 6 or 7 inches from the outside of the concrete walls. So the garage door sits right on the taper itself, and there's really no way for water to get up underneath it. And especially where the floor itself tapers out the front, you're not going to get water up underneath the door and run into the garage doing it the way I do it right here. And I don't see, you know, in Maine, when I drive around and look at other jobs or look at other people's work, there's no one else that does it differently than this. Everybody in our state does it this way. So it's not just me that does this. I find, you know, I don't have to do any extra forming here. I know how to just kind of shape that concrete and give it a nice even taper all the way across. It's really easy once you get the hang of how to do it. Get that line straight in the back where the taper starts and then the floor goes. It's easy to get that straight once you know what you're doing. And I like letting it set up quite a bit like this. That way there's absolutely no sagging in the concrete. It holds its shape really well, and it goes pretty fast. I'm going to get this. This is about a 12-foot wide concrete door, if I remember right. I'm going to get this all tapered and sloped out, and probably takes me like 3 minutes to get this done. And then as I finish the concrete, you'll see here, I'm going to put the power trowel on it real quick. As I go to start finishing, I just continually work on it until I feel like it's ready. I usually put a broom finish on the slope part. I'll hit this 2 or 3 times with my hand trowel, my steel trowel, and I'm continually working on it to make it look really nice, making that edge look really sharp and straight. So it's a completely finished looking slope garage door when I get done. Now I'm giving that about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch slope in addition to the slope the floor already has. And I can kind of gauge it by the top of the concrete form as I'm digging out the concrete right there. It's pretty easy to gauge what like a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch is as you run your mag across there. And because I'm running it flat as I'm digging the concrete out, there's no dips or humps or anything. Everything looks really good. Using the 3,500 PSI, sometimes we'll even use a 4,000 PSI concrete. The concrete's pretty creamy. It's pretty nice to work with, especially today. You can see it's kind of cloudy today. There's no wind. Pretty good day for finishing concrete. There, that's how I get my taper in there. So that's just kind of rough cut for the first pass across that. Now I'm just rounding the edger. I always round the edger using my concrete edger. That kind of strengthens that front edge. So if he just wants to backfill this with gravel after we pull the form out, or if he wants to, put asphalt in, or maybe even like a concrete driveway, at least that edge right there is really good, hard, and finished, as I guess if you want to say it. Now I'm just finishing the edge right there with a 3-foot doors going. And then I'll continually use that as I finish, maybe 2 or 3 more times. So I'm finishing by myself. Sean's actually working. He's got another structure he's building here right on the same lot. And he's parking his RV under. But you'll see him back and forth in the video kind of helping me do edges every once in a while. So I'm going to go around, now that I can reach everything from the outside, I can go around and get my edges all magged. And get them floated out nice and flat. And this is kind of how you do it right here. This is just a little bit before you're going to put the power trowel on, so it's still fairly soft, but it has firmed up quite a bit from when I last bull floated. And this initial magging right here is just getting a step ahead of, when I put the power trowel on, basically making sure the edges are all nice and flat. So now I'm at the point where I can walk on the concrete. This was probably 20 minutes after I tapered that door. I can walk on the concrete, and I'm not even sinking in maybe a 1/16 of an inch with my shoes. So the concrete's really firm. If you're sinking in more than that, then it's too early. You got to stop, hold off a little bit, let it firm up a little bit more. Otherwise, you're going to create a lot of imperfections in the surface just using the power trowel. Now, what I'm doing today is I'm floating the concrete. So I actually have finish blades on the power trowel. So like a steel trowel, I got steel blades on the power trowel, but I put on these float blades. I clipped them on over the finish blades. You'll see I'm going to be taking them off here in a minute. And those are what we call the initial, like the first pass we float. Now you can use combo blades too if you want. And we do on a lot of my other videos, we'll have combo blades so we don't have to put on these float blades and then kick them off later on. But today I'm using the floats, and then I'll kick them off and use the finish blades. And this is just to initially break open the concrete, start the finishing process, going over the bull float finish part of it, getting out the bull float lines, helps flatten out the surface a little bit better. And then I usually go in a pattern. You can see I usually go east or west or north and south. And then the next time I hit the concrete with the power trowel, I'll cross those patterns to help flatten things out even more. So I'm going to just show you here how I work on the garage door a little bit more now that I've got the initial floating part of it done with my hand trowel. You can use any hand trowel you want. I like the hand trowel that has the flat back, like this one, and a rounded front. I have all kinds of different ones. I got the ones with both the flat front and the back, and then I have this one here. And you can see how really nice and smooth that's coming out now, and sharp and straight that line is. And now I'm just blending it right into the floor. So again, this is a process. You know, it's about letting the concrete set up a little bit. It's about timing. It's a little bit too early to broom quite yet, I feel like, although some people might broom it right now. I'm going to give it a few more minutes and fill in any tiny little imperfections by just scraping up a little bit of cream. And then I trowel them right back out, get that nice and smooth. And that's the method you want to use right there if you're using a hand trowel, back and forth. Tipping the trowel up a little bit one way or the other, depending on which way you're going. What I like about tapering the garage doors like this is when you're walking in the garage, there's no trip edge, there's nothing you got to step over. It's just a natural progression of walking right into the garage. If you're wheeling something into the garage, there's no little lip or anything you got to pick it up over to get it over. Especially if you got, little kids riding bikes or maybe somebody in a wheelchair. This is a very smooth transition to get in and out of the garage. There's no bump when you're driving up into it, It's just, I don't know. Just my own personal opinion. This is the way I like doing them. This is the way I've always done them. So now that I got a few minutes before I got to hit it again with a power trowel, now I can go right back around, do my edges, get them all done in advance while the concrete is nice and creamy, get them all smoothed out. If I do have any little imperfections, any little holes or dips, I can fill them in right now. As you can see, I'm basically just going back and forth. I got everything filled in really nice when I first magged it out. All right, here's the float blades I'm kicking off. They're just like a little bit heavier, dutier blade right there that you clip on over the finished blades. And you have one for each blade, so there's 4 of them. I'm just going to show you me kicking 2 off here. Boom, and there it is right there. And now I'm onto my steel blades, basically like a hand trowel. And you can see there's a big difference in how smooth this is going to make it. This is probably 30 minutes maybe after I got done hitting it the first time. So the surface has cured up quite a bit. And again, I'm crossing that pattern from how I did it the first time. This is how pros finish concrete, guys. You have a method, you have a pattern you go by that makes the surface flatter every time you hit it. If you just randomly go all over the place, if you're doing this in kind of like a rainbow pattern, then you don't finish concrete every day. You might finish it quite a bit or maybe not at all, but you really don't know what you're doing, and your floors aren't anywhere near as flat on the surface as these are. That power trowel will leave little dips in the concrete, little concave type dips. Even though it doesn't seem like it, it does. So, every time you go over it like this, opposite of the direction you went over it the first time, you continue to flatten them out. And if you got a garage floor that's flat and you just keep running it the same way every single time you finish it, then you're going to have a lot of puddles in that thing. Water's just they're going to sit basically based on the rows that you finish it in. In this, even with something with a 3-inch slope in it, if you have those little dips here and there, then you're going to have little puddles here and there, all from the back all the way to the front. Finishing it this way, you could dump a 5-gallon bucket of water in the back when we're done, and it would run all the way to the doors without leaving any puddles. So again, just fine-tuning that door again. Now it's going to be hard enough and smooth enough, so I'm going to run a broom over it after. And then after I run the broom over it, you'll see I'll edge it, and that'll be it for the garage door. The garage door will be done. I won't have to worry about that anymore. And I can just focus on finishing the rest of the floor here. See Sean up's back. Sean's out back helping me with some steel troweling. Again, this is his floor. It's his garage. So he's just helping me, making sure everything comes out looking really nice. And that's how you can run just give the garage door a tapered, kind of textured finish right there. That's a professional way of doing a garage door. And then I'll just finish off that edge. Now remember, this first 6 inches of this door is going to be outside the garage door. So we want to make sure that outside edge is finished off really nice. It has a little bit of texture to it. And then from there it's just finished concrete floor. I gave that back just a little bit longer than I gave the front to hit it with the steel blades. If you can remember, when we poured the floor, the back slump was just a little bit looser than this second truck was. So the second truck is actually setting up a little bit faster than the first. Crossing my pattern again, as you can see. I'm absolutely leaving no foot tracks here. Now, if you're leaving foot tracks in this stuff, like wet foot tracks in the concrete as you're finishing it, then you're on it a little bit too early. You know, your foot tracks shouldn't be really wet as you're power troweling through this stuff. Another thing that pros know that most others don't is the timing. You see now I'm going right back over that front load, crossing the pattern from when I just hit it last, flattening that out even more. I'm actually using my 30-inch power trowel today. These are pretty nice little neat trowels on smaller jobs. They work pretty good. Quite a bit lighter than the 36-inch trowels. Then another thing, when I shut my trowels off, I don't like shutting them off right in front of the garage door. So I'll move it off to the side a little bit like that, and then I'll shut it off. And now I'm just really, really fine-tuning that line right there that goes from one side of the door to the other. You can see how nice and straight that is. Remember, that was all done by eye, right? I still get it really nice and straight just because I've done hundreds of them that way. And now I'm up back. I'm finishing off. I'm putting on the last steel trowel around my edges. And again, we've hit these edges. This is like maybe the 5th time we've gone around these edges. So the edges are just as smooth as where the power trowel hits, and they blend in really perfectly the way we do them. There's no taper there. There's no dip there. Everything looks really blended really nice after we get done. You can see I'm doing the edges from the inside this time. See how fast that is. Again, leaving no foot tracks because that's how hard it is right now. Now that the concrete's this hard, I mean, it's at the point where it's not soft enough to leave any humps or dips now. So at this point, I can, even though I'm still crossing my pattern, I could basically go any way I want now just to finish this thing off because it's basically rock hard. I'm gonna pull this power trowel off after this hit, and then you're gonna see I'm gonna jump right back on it and saw it. So that's how hard it is now. I'm kind of just putting the finishing touches on it, what I call kind of shining the surface out, burning the surface out. That's what Sean wanted. He wanted it really nice and smooth to make it easy to clean. And I believe he's going to end up putting like a clear concrete sealer over this to kind of protect it. And eventually, once this all cures out, it'll cure out basically what looks like kind of white. And you won't even see these trowel marks after this. These are just in there because of what little bit of moisture is left in the concrete. Ooh, there goes the dog. Dog's helping me a little bit. So there, Sean and I got the trowel pulled off, got that loaded and cleaned in the truck. I snapped my chalk lines out. One down the middle each way is going to be plenty for this to help control any type of, contraction or shrinkage cracking that might occur here in the next week or two. And I'm using an old soft cut saw. I'm one of my old electric soft cut saws. I got 2 of these. And these allow me to saw the concrete. They go down about 1.25 inches with a brand new blade. They allow me to saw the cut in right after I get done power troweling without damaging the floor at all. So look guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. If you want to learn how to do concrete like we do, join the Concrete Underground. That's my private training. That's down in the description of the video. If you got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments. I'll try to help you out and answer them in there. But thank you for watching. Come on back. We'll see you on the next one here.